Is Georgia the third best team in the country heading into 2023? Well, that's what the FPI says. What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and we're going to break down everything the FPI ranking says about the Georgia Bulldogs, their chances to win the SEC, go to the playoff, win the national championship, all of that. So, again, Georgia starts at number 3, behind Ohio State and behind Alabama. Alabama actually at number 2, which makes no sense to me because I feel like Georgia has more coming back than Alabama, and Georgia had a better year last year, so I still scratch my head over that. A 27.4 FPI. That means against an average team on a neutral field, they would win by 27.4 points. So basically by 4 touchdowns. They're 4 touchdowns better than an average team. So obviously FPI very high on Georgia, but still I question them at number 3. They predict them to go 11.7 and 1.2, and that would include the SEC championship game. So basically, you're looking at an 11-1 season, then winning the SEC championship, or going 12-0 and then losing in the SEC championship. That's kind of how the FBI sees it playing out for this Georgia team. They give them a 22.4% chance of winning out, so going undefeated, 13-0, including the SEC championship. I think, actually, I would probably put that number higher. I think there's about a 50-50 chance that this Georgia team goes 13-0. I think they're the best team in the SEC. I think they're better than everyone. They will be better than everyone that they play. They will have a tough test on the road at Tennessee, and then obviously a tough test in the SEC championship. But if you're asking me the odds of them winning those 2 games versus losing those 2 games, I do think that's closer to 50-50. We'll just, by comparison, Alabama, their chances of going undefeated are actually 13.6 though, because they play a tougher schedule. But Ohio State, they have a 34.3% chance of going undefeated. So I think Georgia should definitely be ahead of Ohio State in that. Georgia has a much better chance of going undefeated than Ohio State when you look at their schedule, playing Notre Dame, Penn State, and Michigan. So again, I don't agree with the FBI here, but again, 22.4% chance to go undefeated. A 100% chance of at least getting to a bowl game. I think everyone would agree with that. Winning the division, 89.5% chance that Georgia wins the SEC East. Tennessee would be that team behind them, but they're at 5.4%. 5.4% for Tennessee. So it's clear that Georgia is the favorite in the East. No one really close to them. I actually would disagree here. I think Tennessee's got more than a 5% chance of winning the East because they get Georgia at home, and I think they're going to be a good team. So I would bump their percentage up and probably put Georgia closer to 75%. But again, this is clearly the best team, or the favorite in the SEC East, and the FBI clearly agrees with that. So winning the SEC, 49.3% chance that they do that. So basically a 50-50 chance that Georgia wins the SEC championship. I would agree with that. I think it's kind of Georgia versus the field. You look at Alabama, you look at LSU, maybe even, like I said, Tennessee. There are some other contenders, and I don't think that Georgia is the team is for sure going to win it. But again, if you're taking Georgia versus the field, I think it's about a 50-50 chance. And so that's where that percentage is at, 49.3%. But let's compare it to Alabama. They're actually at 40.9%. So 49% for Georgia, 41% for Alabama, even though Alabama is ahead of them in the FBI. Just really kind of tells you that Alabama is going to have a tougher schedule, and because of that, their path might be tougher to get there. They got to go through LSU in the West. That's going to be a big story. But that, again, that surprised me. That doesn't leave much of a percentage for a team like LSU when Alabama and Georgia are that high. In fact, LSU is at 7.1% to win the SEC. I think they have a better chance than that. But 49.3% for Georgia. And then to make the playoffs, 63.1% chance that they make it into the college football playoff. That's a higher percentage than winning the SEC, which means there is a path. And I've already kind of thought about this. If they lose to Tennessee and Tennessee goes on to the SEC championship, and that's the only loss for Georgia, there's a good chance that Georgia could get into the playoff. They've won it the last 2 years. I know their schedule is not as tough this year, but I still think that because of what they've done in the past, if they're really dominant in the rest of their games, they could get in. Or if they go 12-0, lose in the SEC championship to a really good team, another playoff team, then there could be a way for them to get in that way. So yeah, there is definitely there are a couple of options here for Georgia to make it into the college football playoff without winning the SEC, and that's why that number is so high, 63.1%. That number is a little bit higher than Alabama. Alabama is actually at 62.1%. But you talk about LSU. LSU's only at 23.7%. Ohio State's at 82.2%. The FPI loves the Buckeyes. And again, I think Georgia should be at number 1 on that list as well. I think they've got the best chance of making it in. How about making it to the national championship? 35.9% chance that they're able to do that. That is actually behind Alabama. Alabama's at 38%, but Ohio State's all the way up at 57%. And again, the FBI really high on those 3 teams. Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia, they've kind of got some separation between those teams and everyone else, which I disagree with, by the way. But 35.9% chance that they make it, and then a 19.1% chance that they win the national championship. That's behind Alabama at 20.4%. And a 36.7% chance that Ohio State wins the national championship. So I don't understand why there's so much love for Ohio State coming out of the FPI. I think Georgia is still the front runner. I would definitely turn some of these raise some of these percentages. The only one I'd probably lower would be the win the division, because again, I think Tennessee has a chance. But yeah, Georgia expected to be right there in that top tier with Alabama and Ohio State, at least according to the FBI. Do you think they're at number 3, or do you think they're at 1 or 2? Give me your thoughts down in the comments below.